Hey, Dr. Julie.
Hello.
Nice to see you today.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Well, it's the week after Father's Day, and it was fantastic, and we had a wonderful weekend. So let's talk about foundations of families. So today's title of our podcast is Do As I Do. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Prime Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Skip Weiss, the Bowtie Chiropractor, and I am here with the one and only amazing co-host, Dr. Julie Weiss, Dr. Fairy Fingers, BDC certified coach, business coach, entrepreneur, fabulous lady, and super mama. Nice to have you on again with me today, as always.
Yeah.
Such a pleasure. Super excited to be here. Coming off a pretty phenomenal weekend. Great Father's Day for me. Thank you, Dr. Julie, for giving me such an amazing Father's Day with our kiddos. It's just what you do in my life means the world to me, and what you do for our family is phenomenal. And I couldn't ask for a better wife or spouse or partner or best friend. So thank you so much for that. Today we're talking about do as I do. I find that a lot of dads ask us a lot of questions. They ask us about how can they take care of their children, how can they be better at things, and I've kind of laid out 5 points as to how to really structure an amazing family and create an amazing fatherly foundation, because we just got done celebrating our good friend Joe Poor's birthday, 66 years. He owns Polyjail Building Company in Indianapolis, and they are the longest bonded family company in United States history. They're actually on their 6th generation of family running the business. And I find it incredibly, an incredible insight as to how Joe is with his family, the foundations he set up. But you kind of see this along the lines with all families, is amazing foundations. And what's your thought on that from a dad's perspective and a mom's perspective? But what's your thought from a spouse's perspective of a dad and his role in his child's?
I mean, I go back to Joe. I mean, that's legacy that he's leaving behind. And so I think, a dad needs to be, I think lots of times if it's a new dad, they don't know where to start. I think just
Right.
being present is the biggest thing, and just really being there and being with that child. But really mirroring what you want or envision of how you want that child to grow up.
Yep, the do as I do concept, not do as I say, not as I do, but do as I do and as I say.
Correct. And I don't think it needs to be, well, I didn't have that growing up, or I don't know how to do that. I think there's enough other people to be able to mirror that behavior off of. And I think that also lends to, it could be a mother or father, but then that also builds that foundation stronger for that individual as they're teaching that child, that then they get to mirror off of their child of, well, if that child is behaving a certain way, is that mirrored back to maybe how that dad or that mom is behaving?
Yeah, the mirror is a massive thing, and that's my first point: is do as I do, not the old adage, do as I say, not as I do. That doesn't work with children because they see everything that you do. Case in point, my son Brecken, our son, pride and joy, amazing kid, mirrors everything that I do. Mirrors everything that I do with you. Mirrors the way that I talk. Mirrors the way that I walk. Everything. He looks up to me. I think he thinks that I'm invincible. And Peyton's the same way though, because Peyton's mirroring the people in her life around her, around who her dad's like, what her mom's like. They mirror us. They watch what we do. They do everything that we do. So if you're going to be at home and you're trying to instill really good family foundations, number one, act accordingly to how exactly you want your children to be treated. Treat your spouse the exact same way. Treat your wife the same way. Take care of her, get the door for her, show her chivalry, show her the small things that made old America and the United States great, that have completely been walked on and left behind. Number one, show your child how to get the door properly for your wife, how to mind her head when she gets into the car so she doesn't hit the side of the car. Get the door for her in the rain, have an umbrella ready for her, walk with her away from traffic, make sure that she's towards the grass, not towards traffic. Be the body, the shield for her. Always enter a room first if you're unsure of the room, but always allow her out first as well. So that was actually one thing that I learned from you early on, was that women go first at church. So to always stand back when you go up for communion, let everybody pass you, and then you become behind them to protect them, to watch over them, to be that last person through. What's your thought on that?
I think that's just how the world should be. But again, I step back and because so much of that is missing,
Mm-hmm.
that I feel the hesitancy could be like, well, I didn't have that growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. And so take that, understand that, just because you maybe didn't have that growing up doesn't mean that you can't now start that for your family and begin that
Right. You can
foundation.
be the change. You can be the addition
Absolutely.
to that. And I even looked on Chat GTP, and I'll be honest with you. I asked AI, I was like, what are the most common questions dads ask to be a good father? And it was alarming. There was 15 of them on there. And a lot of them were about child psychology and how do they be good dads? How do they meet their child's emotional needs? How do they meet the child's expressions? How do they meet the child as to where they're at? And number one is just listen to them. Listen to
Yep.
what they're saying.
Listen, unplugged, listen. And that doesn't mean that you need to know an answer right away. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's where some people don't, it doesn't even matter now if we're talking about kids or business. It doesn't matter if you don't know the answer in that instant. It's being able to ask that question and then to listen for that question or listen for an answer from that child of what they're truly looking for. And
Right.
I think being vulnerable of if you don't know the answer, to say, that's a good question. I don't know that. Let's go figure that out
Yeah,
together.
and I've said that to Brecken. I've said that to Peyton. Like, hey, buddy, or hey, little lady. Like I call Peyton, our little lady or baby girl. I'm like, hey, I don't know the answer to that, but I'm gonna figure it out. Or maybe mom knows the answer, and if mom doesn't know the answer, then we definitely need to figure it out. And being honest with your children, but meeting their emotional needs is a big thing. And I think one of the biggest things that throws parents off right now, and even in business, working with employees as well, and workforce, is that because people are so inundated with electronics, because they're so inundated with blue light, their brains are actually under tremendous amounts of stress. So it's common to see children that are over emotional right now. And I'll be the first to say it. Like when Brecken gets too much screen time, he turns into an emotional little turd. And it's really hard to deal with because the things that I could tell him earlier were like, hey, man, let's not do that. Or I need your help with this. Or when we come home and maybe the trash isn't taken out, and I'm like, hey, buddy, take the trash out, please. And he kind of throws his hands in the air and he's like, what do you want from me? It's like, I know you haven't done anything all day. But he's been on his game or he's been on his phone. And that makes him super susceptible to stress. So his brain's already overstressed from all the visual and noise integration into his system where it's too much for the day. And then I come home and if I ask him to do something, a mountain is made out of a molehill immediately.
So that's like TV time, that's
Yes.
tablets,
Decrease
that's
that screen
computer,
time.
that's phones,
Mm-hmm.
that's the Wii, Nintendo, that's all of the
All of it.
electronics.
All of
And
it.
if we see that in kids, we need to realize that also as an adult, that
Mm-hmm.
if we've been on Zoom meetings all day or staring at our phone, of to take that step back and how are we energetically communicating with our kids? Are we
Well,
responding in that same way?
movement breaks, right? They need
Mhm.
movement. Like, and this is something that'll kind of floor you, but over half of the nerves that make up your spinal
Mhm.
cord are for movement. Over half of them. It's what actually feeds your brain and keeps your neurology working. But here's the other side of it. Over half of those nerves that are there for movement are actually in your neck. All the receptors are in your neck. So if a child's always looking forward, looking down at their electronics, lumped up in his C, not moving. Movement is life, and movement's not there. Their brain gets completely overwhelmed. They can't detox the stress. And that's where I find that a lot of parents have a hard time meeting their kids' emotional needs because the kid's already emotionally spent and burnt. So how do you change that? You get their butts outside.
The movement. I was going to say, like,
Movement.
that's one of the core
Movement
things that
is
I teach in
key.
my class, but we also talk about in our clinic. It's as soon as you go into that like curl,
That flex stress
that's a
space.
fetal position.
Yeah.
That is like shutting down brain centers. That's
Mm-hmm.
literal like protect, and you're shutting down everything. And as soon as you can open back up to the world, and that's where the neurology starts to actually cycle again. And
Yeah.
that's what brings that life. And so even just sitting certain ways, but also that movement outside.
Movement.
Opening up the chest walls, breathing.
Yeah,
but
well, we have
head up and out.
being chiropractors, we're at a stance where we're constantly around our patients, we're constantly moving, we're constantly on the go. I am. you're in the office a lot and back doing a lot of paperwork, looking at the computer screens, and same thing with our teams. Having standing work desks, getting our butts up, moving around helps some. But even then, I'm well aware of that now. Like you're on your screen a lot because you're doing a lot of administrative work. But I find the days when you're not on your screen and the days that you're moving more, your coping skills are way better, or the time with the kids, and that's the truth. And it's the same thing with me though too when I'm on my screen a lot, and I shouldn't be. And if we can segue into that now, is the next question that I saw and that dads will ask me too, and what are age appropriate activities for my children? And I will say anything outside is age appropriate, no matter how old they are or how young they are. Get them outside, get them moving. I love to golf with our kids. I love to golf. I love to golf. I like to watch them challenge. I like to watch them struggle, but I also like to watch them succeed. So what are some things that you have found age appropriate wise? So let's start 0 to a year. Let's just start infant wise. What is an age appropriate fun thing for a child 0 to 12 months old?
Well, let's hope that they're not plugged in,
Yeah,
right,
they shouldn't be on a screen.
tablet.
No.
But I mean, quite honestly, it's just like that. Those vision centers are coming in, so just even peekaboo. It's looking
Peekaboo.
at
Yep.
looking at books, but really going outside. Like we're talking about going outside. It's sitting in the lawn.
Yep. Feeling that on their feet.
Yep, the sensory innovation, is super good.
Yep.
Sandboxes.
Tummy time.
At that age.
Not face down in the dirt. But tummy time.
But they're sensory, and so
Yep.
they need to be able to feel those things. That's how they're gonna take in their world. And so like the dad, like if we're going back to dads, like you can still be outside and doing your work, but then put a blanket out and have that baby outside with you.
Yeah, and I think then as they progress, then after a year, we get into the 2, 3, let's go 2 to 4. That's all eye-hand coordination movement. So no, I'm not going to try to hit my son with a football pass or like my daughter with something, or but I'm going to work on hand-eye coordination with them.
Sounds like the water
touch,
tables.
water tables, yeah, sensory tables. Men love to splash.
Yeah.
We do.
Bubbles are really good at that age.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to see that, to blow, and to try to reach for those things. Like we're talking summer things.
Mm-hmm. Winter is great though too. Get them outside, get them in the cold.
Yep, absolutely.
Cold's even really good for their immune systems. Despite what people want to tell you, go outside, get cold, you'll catch a cold. No, go outside with a hyper suppressed immune system due to nerve irritation in your body. That'll cause you to be sick. But if you go outside with a fully functioning nervous system and you're fully adapting to your environment, you're not going to get sick. Cold therapy is huge. Wim Hof, all that stuff, dunk tanks that people do now for recovery, all that comes back to being outside in the cold and getting used to the cold, which is incredibly good for your immune systems. So having these kids out, play, movement, hand-eye coordination, and then as we get into 5th and 6th, like 4, 5, 6 years old, outdoor is key, but having them like go on adventures, find things, scavenger hunts,
and like everybody
sticks.
like loves scavenger
Mhm.
hunts, growing up. And so scavenger hunts, or even like setting up different like obstacle courses, all of those things then that could be a whole family game.
Hopping on 1 foot, 2 feet, hopscotch, all the things that we did as kids that have slowly went away. Riding,
so important.
Like
so
riding
important.
bikes. Bicycle rides are huge. So as your kids learn how to bike, take them out on bicycle rides, get those legs moving, get their arms moving, support themselves. Hand-eye coordination again as they get older too. That cross crawl. So bicycling, moving their arms back and forth, all of that is massive. And being in nature is key. Hikes, walks. Well, Brecken brought that up this weekend. We asked him where he wanted to go, and he's like, I'd like to hike the Smoky Mountains. I'm like, where is that coming from? That does not sound like fun to me at all. But I'll do it because I want to have him out in the environment and moving more. And it's the same thing with Peyton as well, as getting them moving. And then as they get older, they're going to get into more high school, more middle school and high school related sports activities. But being involved in those extracurriculars, and that segues into the next question that I've seen a lot from my dads is, how do I stay involved with my kids' extracurricular activities because of work? Because of that work-life balance. A lot of the times this isn't a sexual thing where men provide for the household, but in our line of work we see that a lot, where dad's at work and mom's at home, or there's a single worker and then a care provider in the house. And a lot of the times the dad is the one that's working, the mom is providing the care for the children. How can dads become more involved in their children's extracurriculars?
Well, if they can be at that match, if they can be at that game, even if it's
Mm-hmm.
not for the start of it, but they can be there for when they're finishing.
Mm-hmm.
But if that just doesn't work with the schedule, there's got to be practice time,
Yes.
right? So it's the, hey, I wasn't able to be at that ball game or that soccer match, but let's go outside, show me what you've learned,
Exactly.
teach me what you're doing,
Teach me.
and have that engagement. Like that's like if you can't physically be there for those matches, but remember that what day that it's on, and make sure that when you're home that you're checking in of like, hey, how'd that match go?
Yes, and you just segued my brain into another thing, which is great because parents want to create kids that are leaders. They want to create kids that have leadership qualities. We see it all, we hear it all the time. I want my kid to be a leader. I want him to stand out. I want him to help. Well, the biggest thing somebody can do when they're a leader is learning how to teach. And what I mean by that is that I learn the best when I teach people. And it's the same thing when I see you do it. But who's really good at teaching is Brecken and Peyton, and asking them to show. So what happens then as a parent is you're empowering your kid to lead because you're asking them to show you what they learned that day, or show you the skill that they learned maybe in the sport, or even in, like, if you had them in grappling, kickboxing, wrestling, have them show you what they learned because they're going to reteach it to you, which will make them learn it better. But more importantly, then they're leading you. So you're creating leadership through education and them educating you. That's the best thing that I see out of Brecken. B-Man's been skateboarding since he was 3. And to watch Brecken teach kids how to skateboard, he's a phenomenal teacher. Mm-hmm. And he walks them through, he'll glide them up and down. I'm not going to get emotional because I got a lot of ties to his skateboarding, but watching him move and teach. And I think that comes from him watching us teach.
I would agree. I mean, like, again, it's not maybe something that you think about that you want to, have your child run an organization or do something like that, but they're always watching, and so they cue in on the mannerisms or the physical touch that you have or the tone that you're using when you're teaching somebody. And that's the same thing of like an open-ended question, right? Like we could go back to school and ask, you're going to get 2 different answers. If you'd ask like, how was school? It's either going to be the great, or can you show me what you learned in school today?
Yeah, show me what you learned today. Yeah, I think that's huge. Show me, right? And like you said, it's when you do ask that question, like, hey, how was school today? Or Peyton does the same thing, like, how was school today? It's like, no, I don't know. That's why I'm asking. But ask that open-ended question. What did you learn in science today? What did you learn in math today? What was your favorite part of your day? What did you do in gym class today? Can you show me? Again, that show and tell, that walk through, to allow them to teach you, but more importantly, allow them to lead you as a parent. Because there's a common saying that I remember when we talked about that whole scheduling thing with my grandma and how kids had to be on a schedule or they didn't get fed. But I like to look at it this way. Are we actually training the kids to be on our schedules, or are our children actually training us to be on their schedule? And they're training us to be on their schedule. They're training us to be a better parent, but more importantly, get to know who they are as children and lead them. Also know that you created them. And with that comes something that's very, very special. You actually created another species of you, which is crazy. Like, we created our own brand, children. And there they are. And they're the most beautiful, amazing kids I've ever met. And we take care of hundreds of children a day. And the fact is, though, is that you created them. You're responsible for them. You're responsible to lead them. You're responsible to show them what life is like, to show them all the ins and outs, all the ups and downs. But I would really have you consider your children to be exposed to what the downside of life can be too. Some of the struggles, the hardships, but understand then how to lead and get them work through that adversity to move through that problem, right?
Absolutely. Like that's, as a family unit, your children need to also be able to look up to you when maybe not everything is
when times are hard,
going right.
When things are tough.
That's only going to be able to give them the tools to be able to, when they encounter things later on in their life, if it's school, not making a baseball team, not getting that promotion, of how they're going to react within that moment.
Kids need to learn how to take a loss. But I don't mean that in a negative way. They need to learn how to fail Absolutely. Fast, and then move on. because we often get this question, and I'm going to ask it to you, and if you've worked with the people we know really, really well, what is the opposite of success? Most of the time, people will say it's failure, right? Mm-hmm. Actually, failure is not the opposite of success. We heard this from Sean Dill, Dave Meltzer, all the people we've been around, and they heard it from other people too. But the opposite of failure is actually part of success. Failure is needed to be successful. So what's the best thing to do? Teach your kids to fail, and teach them to fail fast and recover quickly. That's the key. So that's why I love golf. That's why I love the fact that Brecken was in skateboarding, because he learned how to recover fast. He learned how to get up and just do it again, and learn that he wasn't going to fall, learn that he is going to hit a bad shot, and it's about the next shot he takes. It's about the next thing he does to set himself up for success, versus if you do this, you're going to set yourself up for failure. You can go for that green in 2 that's a par 5. You're going to end up in the sand maybe, or you can lay up and play it safe, or are you going to go out?
How would you know if you never tried?
Exactly, and how are you going to recover? Most people have a fear of recovering from failure, not the fact of failing, and we've heard that from our coaches before too. And you being a Black Diamond Club certified coach, you know this. They talk about this all the time, is how do you help your clients fail quickly, and then how do you help them recover really, really fast?
Biggest thing, you need to take that first step.
The first step is key. So again, we come back to this, is do as I do, not don't do as I do and just do as I say. Lead by example. And I can't say that I can't express this enough to you, but it's been amazing to watch the people that we work with as they ask us questions. How do we lead our kids? How do we walk our kids through life? But how do we help them both mentally, physically, emotionally, and financially? Like, how do we treat them and teach them successful principles as well? And we'll dive into that on the next episode. And this has been an absolute delight. And teach your kids to teach. Teach your kids how to fail fast, and move through adversity. And do as you do. And remember, your children mirror everything about you. You have anything else for this week?
No, it's perfect.
All right, for those of you out there, tune in, listen to us, share this to as many people as you possibly can, because Dr. Julie and I are on a mission to help as many people in our lifetimes as possibly can, help as many marriages, as many business people as we can, just become better leaders and better parents, and we're here for you. So go out there, get it done. Take care, everybody. Bye.